Hi, thank you. District Attorney Rollins, Ian Pollenbaum. I'm the Chief of the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Unit. My team of almost a dozen people handles all the investigations of adult sexual assault reports in this jurisdiction, and prosecutions in Superior Court of those cases, and Superior Court prosecutions of the most serious domestic violence cases that are referred to us. Obviously, we're law enforcement, we work with the police, but the priority first is always the safety and security of the people being harmed and the families affected if it happens in a household. That means listening to them. That means learning from them, especially if they're the people who might know the perpetrators or the abusers better than anybody else, and certainly better than we do. However, it also means stepping in forcefully when somebody is in danger, or if somebody poses a danger to their loved ones or the community. On the next slide, as suggested, during the pandemic, the challenges for people affected by domestic violence and sexual assault have become harder for all the reasons you can imagine. It may sound easy or obvious, but there are more people at home even now. People in cramped, both physically and otherwise situations, economic trouble, fewer outlets, fewer places to go, both physically and psychologically, even more barriers to seeking help somewhere else or making a report. Domestic violence reports to the police dropped very sharply when the pandemic began in the spring. It didn't mean that the incidents were not happening, obviously. Those numbers crept back up and eventually got back to levels somewhat above the previous year. Part of the problem, of course, is the escalation of all those conditions that lead to abuse and controlling behavior that's short of physical violence, but can end up in physical violence. Part of our response, and you can go to the next slide, is simply to keep doing what we do as much as possible under these challenging circumstances. Obviously, the frontline workers, including the police, are still out there responding to calls. They can't say it's COVID-19, we're not going to a domestic violence call. The frontline medical workers, EMS, can't say it's COVID-19, we're not going to go to a house where somebody has been violently hurt. Nurses who conduct sexual assault exams in hospital, they're still suiting up, and those numbers of exams went down sharply as well in terms of people willing to go to a hospital and get examined. They're coming back up too as things open up and people get more strength to make reports and seek help. And our staff, our prosecutors, are working up cases. Our victim witness advocates are reaching out to survivors, and not just to people who are newly in crisis with new cases, but especially to people who are the victims in cases of ours that, because of the court shutdown, have been delayed or deferred. We've had a lot of contacts really just to tell people that we haven't forgotten about them. Part of our response, especially given the COVID-19 concerns in the jail population, is to target even more decisively than we had been those offenders who genuinely pose a danger to people around them. For those people, we are more likely to seek their detention. For others, really most offenders, we're more likely to seek alternatives to incarcerating them. And that's both before trial while the case is pending and as a disposition of the case. But again, it's always geared toward doing whatever it takes to keep people safe and to keep people feeling secure and able to go on with their lives free from abuse. In sexual assault cases, specifically before the world turned upside down for us in March, we were focusing on young people's safety, and focusing on the most vulnerable victims. That includes people who are on the streets, who are in poverty, who have substance abuse problems, and are often preyed upon by somebody who would do them harm by sexual assault. Person safety also includes not only people in colleges, but people in the neighborhoods and people who are out to parties and bars, and specifically people who are using ride shares, because there has been a phenomenon that we're grappling with of people who target young women, unfortunately, often intoxicated young women who have been out, and either rideshare drivers or people pretending to be rideshare drivers. And so we have really a two-front approach: one, trying to make people more aware of the dangers that are out there, and the other is to prosecute these cases and get some of these offenders out of circulation. Those efforts have continued during the pandemic, and they'll be even more important as social interactions pick up again. As people are meeting up, as people are dating, as people are going to gatherings and so forth. So we look forward to keeping pace as things open up. And the motto, like it says here, is that we never went away. We're still here for you.
Thank you, Ian, very, very much. And one of the things Ian is talking about, which we'll hear from her later, is the Alvin Campbell case. Of course, people are innocent until proven guilty, but Liz Riley, who's the deputy in our municipal and district court division, working with Dana Pierce, and one of our largest units we have in our office, is handling that case ably. And unfortunately, we are up to, I believe now, 8 separate and distinct victims of that individual.